I've been listening to a lot of stories on your channel and others about Thai bar girls, and honestly, they all seem to say the same things. They are manipulative and only after money. They will all drain you. Sure, I get it. There are definitely some girls in Thailand's nightlife scene who fit that description. But here's the thing, not every girl is like that. It's not fair to paint them all with the same brush. That's why I wanted to share my story. It's a little different from the usual ones that you hear. I actually ended up marrying a bar girl from Thailand, and my life has been so much better since I met her. She's amazing, and I want to share how all of this happened. Maybe it'll give your viewers a different perspective, or even some advice if they are in a similar situation. Sometimes, taking a chance can change your life for the better. It sure did for me. My story begins back when I met and married a bar girl named Nani. She was 20 at the time, and I was in a completely different place in my life. I had just gone through a tough divorce. My ex-wife and I had been married for 7 years, and we tied the knot when I was only 23. By the time the divorce was finalized, I had just turned 30, and I was a complete mess. The whole experience left me feeling lost and unsure about what I wanted next. During that time, a close friend of mine, who had been to Thailand a few times, suggested I take a trip to Pattaya. He said it would be a good way for me to clear my head and have a fresh start. I didn't have much to lose at that point, so I decided to go for it. Back then, there weren't many ways to research a place like Pattaya. The internet wasn't what it is today, so all I had to go on were stories from friends who had already been there. They painted a picture of a lively, chaotic place full of nightlife and adventure. That was pretty much all I knew before I boarded the plane. At 30 years old, I was still fairly young, well, compared to most of the guys who visit Pattaya. A lot of them were older, often looking to escape their problems or rebuild their confidence. For me, it was more about taking a break. My plan was simple. Spend a couple of weeks there, forget about my messy divorce, and have some fun. And then go back home to figure out my life. Falling in love or starting a relationship was the last thing on my mind. I just wanted to be another tourist passing through, nothing more. It was winter back home when I left, so stepping off that plane in Thailand felt like a shock to the system. The heat hit me the moment I walked out, and it was exactly what I needed. After settling into Pattaya, the first thing I did was head straight to the beach. I wanted to soak up the sun and shake off the cold that had been clinging to me, and maybe even get a tan. The beach was packed with people, but for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. I'd just come from cold weather. Now, here I was, wearing nothing but shorts and sandals, feeling the sun. The heat was intense, something I wasn't used to at all. And then there were the girls. Everywhere I looked, they were smiling, waving, and calling out to me. It was overwhelming in the best possible way. For the first time in a long time, I felt my confidence starting to creep back. I found a spot on the beach, laid down on the sand, and started putting on sunscreen. My pale skin wasn't exactly built for this kind of sun, and I knew I'd turn into a lobster if I wasn't careful. As I was fumbling with the bottle, trying to reach the spots on my back, a young girl walked over and sat down next to me. She had this bright, friendly smile and spoke to me in cute, broken English. "You want me to help?" she asked. I was stunned. This kind of thing would never happen back home. No random girl would ever walk up to a guy on the beach and offer to help him with sunscreen. But here, it felt natural. She must have noticed me struggling, sitting there alone, and decided to lend a hand. When she asked if I wanted her to help me with the sunscreen, there was only one answer I could give: a big fat yes. I wasn't about to turn down an offer like that, especially from someone as stunning as her. It's hard to put into words what she looked like. You know how everyone has that one ideal person they fantasize about? Well, she was that for me, maybe even better than anything I could have imagined. She introduced herself as Nani, and after she finished helping me with the sunscreen, she handed me the bottle and asked if I could put some on her. I couldn't believe it. Her body was perfect. Not too thin, not too curvy, just right. And her smile was enough to make anyone weak at the knees. Now, don't get me wrong, I wasn't naive. I'd heard all the stories about how things work in places like Pattaya. I knew this wasn't some random girl who had approached me just because she was genuinely interested. At some point, there'd be a transaction involved, but in that moment, I didn't care. I was having a great time and decided to just go with the flow. She stayed with me for hours. We talked, laughed, and drank coconuts. It was the perfect way to kick off my holiday. But eventually, the jet lag started to hit me hard. I could feel my energy fading, and I knew if I didn't get back to my hotel soon, I'd end up passing out right there on the beach. The last thing I wanted was to fall asleep in the middle of a conversation with someone as beautiful as Nani. I told her I was tired and needed to rest, and she asked if I wanted her to come to my room. I said, "Sure, you can come if you want, but I'm really tired." I mentioned that because I didn't want her to think that once we were in the room, I'd be able to do anything. Even though I made it clear I didn't have much energy, she still decided to come back with me. We packed up all of our stuff and started to make our way back to the hotel. At this point, I was a little bit anxious as it was my first time, and she randomly appeared from nowhere. I had just met this perfect looking girl, and now she was making her way back to my hotel. We went into my room and took a shower. I was really worn out from the time difference, but I still had a little energy left for about an hour, so we kept going until I completely crashed from being so exhausted. When I woke up, it was close to 9 or 10 p.m. I looked over and noticed she wasn't in bed. For a moment, I felt a rush of panic, but then I saw her sitting on the couch, watching some Thai shows on TV. She looked so beautiful sitting there, smiling at whatever show she was watching. Right then, I realized I could be in real danger of falling for her. Imagine going to Pattaya and getting so attached to someone on your very first day. I wasn't in love with her, we'd just met, but I was definitely drawn to her, and I could already tell it would be tough to say goodbye when the time came. After taking a moment to admire how stunning she looked, I finally got up, hopped in the shower to wake myself up, and when I stepped out, we picked up right where we left off from the night before. It was clear this girl had a wild side, but honestly, I was enjoying every single second of it. And afterward, we stayed close, her head resting on my stomach as we both relaxed together. My stomach was growling loudly because I hadn't eaten in hours. She giggled and said, "Let's eat now, hungry belly." Then she said that since I was new to the area, I should try some of the local spicy Thai food. We got ready and stepped out into the hot, humid weather that I definitely wasn't prepared for. Nani took me to a little restaurant close to the beach. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was packed with people, both inside and outside. This was my first time trying real Thai food, and it was nothing like the stuff I usually ate back home. She ordered a bunch of dishes for me to taste, and since I was so hungry, I dug right in. It was amazing, though some of it was really spicy. Nani wasn't like most girls when it came to eating. She went at it just like me, scoffing everything. I'm not sure why, but I really liked that about her. We both stuck to soft drinks, no alcohol, and the night was perfect. We kept talking and picking at the food on the table until well past 1:30 or 2 in the morning. Her English was surprisingly good for someone from Thailand. Honestly, it was even better than the staff at my hotel's front desk. Once we were done eating, she asked me again if I wanted her to come back to my room, and without a second thought, again, I said yes. We made it back to my hotel room, and everything picked up right where it left off until we both fell asleep. It was such an amazing first night for me in the land of smiles. When I woke up, I saw Nani wasn't in bed or on the sofa, and I began to worry. Was I supposed to pay for yesterday, or had I been robbed? I rushed out of bed, checked all of my stuff, and then looked through my wallet. Everything was still there. Nothing was gone. I felt lucky because things could have gone really wrong if Nani had been a bad person. She could have taken everything in the room and left me with nothing. After I relaxed and thought about how my first night in Thailand had actually been so much fun, I took a shower and got ready for the day ahead. While I was getting dressed, I saw a note on the bedside table. It was from Nani, asking me to meet her at her apartment at 8:30, with her address and phone number written below. After just one night, I could tell I was starting to like her, but I told myself I didn't want to get any more attached than I already was. So I decided to forget about it and not go. The day began pretty relaxed. I went to the pool and had a basic Western-style breakfast from the hotel. It was pretty disgusting, so I decided to eat like a local and only eat Thai food from then on. Might as well enjoy it while I'm here. As the afternoon rolled around, I decided to head out again. I walked around and found an open-air beer bar. When I walked in, I was surrounded by cute Thai girls. It felt like heaven, but most of them were already loud and tipsy, probably because someone had been buying rounds earlier. I asked one of the quieter, more sober girls if she wanted to sit and have a drink with me. She said yes, and we went to a table. She wasn't as pretty as Nani, but she was still nice looking, and she was good company. But once again, I stuck to soft drinks, but I kept buying lady drinks for this new girl, and she was finishing them pretty quickly. We played some of the board games they had in the bar, the kind customers play with the girls, and of course, I lost every single game. After about an hour of playing games and buying her drinks, I started to ask if she wanted to come with me. But before I could finish, she knew exactly what I was after. She stood up, took my hand, and said, "Let's go." I settled the bill, paid her bar fine, and we left together. As soon as we stepped out of the bar, she got straight to the point and said, ST 500 baht. I'm pretty sure that's what I paid. It's a bit of a blurry memory, but this was years ago, and back then, things were a lot cheaper. When we got back to the room, it was nothing like the first night. It was a total mess. She wasn't into me at all, and it felt so awkward that we stopped after about 15 minutes. She got up right away, showered, and I gave her some money. Then she asked me to come back to the bar at midnight to take her again, saying she was going home to check on her son for an hour. Yeah, right. That just meant she had another ST booked. I told her I'd come back for her at midnight, but I didn't mean it. She wasn't worth the effort or the cash, so I just let it go and moved on. The afternoon turned into evening, and I didn't do much except soak up the sun, trying to add some colour to my pale skin. Little by little, I was starting to actually get a tan. I planned to take a nap and then go out for some fun later that night, but when I woke up, it was already around 7 p.m. I showered, got ready, and that's when I saw the note Nani had left me. Now I was torn. Should I go back and enjoy the nightlife, or should I go and see Nani again? But what was I getting into? What did she really want? Even though I liked her, was it worth going back for more? After thinking it over for a few minutes, I finally said, what the hell? I'd had a great time with Nani, so I took the chance and decided to head to her place. I left the hotel, got a bike, and handed the driver the note Nani gave me with her address on it. He dropped me off in what looked like a rough, run-down area where her apartment was. I started wondering if this was a trap. Was I about to get robbed? But against my gut feeling, I went up to the 3rd floor, knocked on the door, and there she was, just as beautiful as I remember. As soon as she opened the door, she hugged and kissed me. She said she didn't think I'd come, since I never called. She was even cooking dinner for us, just in case I showed up, which I thought was really sweet of her. Her apartment wasn't as bad as I expected when I stepped inside. It was actually pretty clean and cozy. A young girl was sitting on a sofa, watching TV, and she gave me a shy smile. Nani told me it was her roommate's daughter, though I had a feeling it might have been hers. The girl looked about 6 or 7 at the time. I sat down and watched some Thai kids shows with her while Nani finished cooking dinner. The little girl was really curious about me. She'd probably never met or talked to a foreigner before, but her English and how well she communicated were amazing, especially for someone her age. She asked me where I was from, and I said the United Kingdom. She kept repeating it until she got it right, then jumped off the sofa and brought back a world atlas. No word of a lie, this little girl flipped through the world atlas and found where I was from, almost all on her own. She was incredibly smart. Dinner was amazing. Nani was a fantastic cook. It was also a lot of fun, with everyone laughing and joking around. I was acting silly with the little girl, making her laugh while we ate. Having a home-cooked dinner at a Thai girl's place in Pattaya wasn't exactly what I had in mind for nightlife fun. I kept wondering, what is going on? Why aren't I at the bar buying lady drinks and looking for a ST girl? But I was having a good time, and I was happy I decided to come. After dinner, I wasn't sure what would happen next. This wasn't exactly the situation I thought I'd be in while in Pattaya. About half an hour after we cleaned up from dinner, Nani's roommate came home. She was pretty, but a little on the heavier side, and she didn't look like your usual bar girl. Her English wasn't great, so Nani translated for me. I asked how her daughter spoke such good English and was so smart for her age. It turned out the girl's father was Dutch and had paid for her to go to a special international school. And in a few months, the girl and her mum was planning to move to Holland. Soon after meeting the roommate, Nani and I went to the beach, where we spent hours talking and laughing together. I was completely taken by her. I could feel myself starting to fall for her. It was early, I know, but she seemed so perfect that I couldn't help it, even though I didn't want to get too serious with anyone. She quickly became the girl of my dreams, even though I knew what kind of work she did. But still, up to that point, she hadn't asked me for any money. As we talked on the beach, Nani shared a bit about her past and her life now. She told me she started working in bars in Bangkok when she was young to help support her family. She did that for 3 years until she moved to Pattaya after a violent customer in Bangkok hurt her badly and left her face bruised. I was glad she felt comfortable enough to open up to me. She also told me honestly that she sometimes took customers in Pattaya to help pay the rent and that she had a part-time cleaning job at some offices. After the beach, we went back to my hotel room for the rest of the night. She showed me how much she enjoyed the evening in more ways than one. As I learned more about Nani, I found out her sister Molly was also a bar girl in Bangkok, and her mum was quite sick and lived there too. Hearing all about Nani's life, most guys would have run the other way and not gotten involved with someone like her. But me, I ended up staying with Nani for the entire month that I was there. I'm not sure why I did it, fresh out of a divorce and falling for a bar girl from Pattaya. That is how crazy stories you hear about start. When the month ended, I gave Nani the money I had left, about 15,000 baht. It doesn't seem like much now, but back then it was worth a whole lot more. The night before I left was really tough for both of us. She was crying, and like a lovesick idiot, I was too. It felt like we'd found something real, and I believed her feelings were genuine. But at the same time, I tried to tell myself that once I got back home, I could just put this whole trip to the back of my mind. Nani said she couldn't come to the airport because it would be too painful for her to see me go. She handed me her details one more time, and I decided to take the risk and give her my contact info as well. The flight home was awful. I felt pretty bad. What was I thinking? Did I really end up falling for a bar girl from Pattaya? Monday morning came, and there I was, back at the daily grind, stuck in traffic, freezing in the cold, and surrounded by miserable faces. Being home felt like a real nightmare. But then on Wednesday, an email from Nani showed up, and I was so happy to see it. It gave me this warm feeling, and my heart started racing. As soon as I opened the email, I couldn't stop smiling, and even laughed right away. She was talking about the dinner we shared and all the funny moments we had joking around with her roommate's daughter. It brought back some really great memories. After all the funny parts, the rest of the email felt like a love letter. She confessed that she had fallen completely in love with me and was feeling heartbroken and low because I had to go. It's weird, but I just knew she was being honest about how she felt. As I read her words, I could almost feel her emotions coming through. It's hard to put it into words, but at the same time, the voice in my head kept repeating, "Never trust a bar girl." I ended up sharing everything with a friend, telling him about Nani and how hard I had fallen for her. He thought I had totally lost my mind falling for a Thai bar girl. And really, I couldn't blame him. He kept saying, "Stop thinking with your little head and use your big head," the more I told him about Nani. Friday finally arrived, and I was relieved. My first week back at work had dragged on forever, and I felt completely miserable. That evening, I decided to call Nani at her apartment. She was so happy to hear from me, she actually cried. We talked for about 20 minutes, and then Apple, her roommate's daughter, wanted to speak to me too. Apple asked when I was coming back because Nani had been sad and crying non-stop. Hearing that made me feel guilty for leaving, even though I really didn't have a choice. It didn't feel good knowing I'd made her so upset. I told Nani I had to hang up because the long-distance call was costing me way too much. Keep in mind, this was long before video calls and all the tech everyone uses today. She asked when I'd be coming back to her, and I told her in a couple of months, as soon as I can. She promised she'd stick to just her office cleaning job and wouldn't take any customers because she loved me and wanted to be with me and saw a future together. Then I did what felt like a stupid mistake at the time. I told her I wanted a future with her and that I loved her. Then hung up and immediately started kicking myself. What was I doing? Was I out of my mind, dropping the L word with a girl from Pattaya? From that day forward, we emailed as much as we could, but we could only afford to call each other 2 or 3 times a week, and even then, just for a few minutes because of how expensive long-distance calls were. 2 months passed, and by sheer luck, or maybe fate, the company I worked for went under and shut down. All of us employees got a severance package. Mine was pretty good, since I'd been there my whole career. I got a full year's pay plus some extra benefits. The same night we got laid off, I secretly booked a flight to Thailand for the next day without telling Nani. Looking back, I probably shouldn't have kept it a surprise. Imagine showing up only to find her with another customer. Thankfully, that didn't happen. I landed in Thailand the next day, went straight to Pattaya and showed up at Nani's apartment. Her roommate opened the door. She was completely shocked and touched that I'd actually meant what I said about my feelings for Nani. She grabbed my arm, pulled me inside, and hugged me tight while saying something in Thai that I couldn't understand. Then Apple burst out of her room, lit up with the biggest smile, and came running at me, launching herself into my arms with the sweetest little hug. In that moment, it honestly felt like I'd come home. Apple told me Nani was still at her cleaning job and wouldn't be back until midnight. She insisted I wait at the apartment and pulled me over to the sofa. She was such a little chatterbox, always excited to show off her English skills. She talked so much that she actually dozed off right there on the sofa while still in mid-sentence. After that, with her mother's permission, I gently put her to bed. Around 12:30 a.m., I heard Nani step through the door. This was the moment. Had I just made the best choice of my life by coming back, or was this the biggest mistake of my life that I'll regret forever? She came around the corner and spotted me. The look on her face at that moment is something I'll never forget and I'll always hold close to my heart. She stood there completely stunned and her eyes welling up with tears. She didn't say a word, but I could see her hands shaking. I walked over, wrapped my arms around her, and softly said, "I told you I wanted a future with you." It was like she forgot how to breathe for a moment. Then she let out a deep sigh, and just like that, the tears started flowing for both of us. Even Apple's mum stood there, tears streaming down her face, yet smiling at the moment before her. After what felt like forever, holding each other so tightly, it was as if our ribs might crack. We finally shared a kiss and then sank onto the sofa together. As we started talking, I found out that Nani had been through a really tough time after I left. Her mother had passed away, but she never told me because she was afraid I might think she was making it up to ask for money. She didn't want me working non-stop just to take care of her. I reassured her by telling her about my job and letting her know that I have enough savings to support both of us for at least a year. After about an hour of talking and catching up, she looked at me and said, "Time for bed." I won't go into much detail about what happened next, but it was amazing. The following month was all about travelling around Thailand. I highly recommend exploring beyond Pattaya, even if your main reason for visiting is the nightlife. Thailand is truly a beautiful country, and not every place is like Pattaya. There are so many incredible cities, landmarks, and things to do. I absolutely loved every moment of it. I had to renew my visa a few times, so I just made a quick trip into Cambodia. A border run takes about 30 minutes. Stamp out of Thailand, stamp into Cambodia, and then walk straight back to get stamped back into Thailand. It's pretty simple. We then headed to Bangkok to visit Nani's sister, Molly. She was in a really rough spot, struggling with addiction. She had become very thin and just didn't look herself anymore. It's hard to believe that this girl was, or still is, a bar girl. It seemed like she was still grieving her mother's passing and was turning to the substances to numb the pain. Seeing her sister like this really upset Nani, so we decided to bring her back to Pattaya and have her stay at Nani's apartment, hoping that it would give her a chance to get her life together. She spent her days just lying around the apartment, doing nothing but crying and fidgeting. She asked me to lend her some money, but I knew it would go towards her habit, so I refused. Instead, I told her she needed to go to the hospital to get checked out and seek some help. She was really hesitant to go to the hospital and get help, so Nani and I had to find a way to trick her. Eventually, she agreed and they gave her a full checkup from head to toe. They found out that she had an intestinal infection, so she was admitted for treatment. We decided it was best because there was a young girl, Apple, in the apartment, and we didn't want her around that. Apple's mum and Nani took turns caring for Molly, while I helped look after Apple. She really enjoyed being around me, and honestly, I loved spending time with her too, even picking her up from school. She was eager to show me off to all of her friends as a special foreigner. It seemed like even kids in Thailand feel the need to impress and show face. I'll admit, I spoiled Apple a bit. She was such a sweet girl, and her English skills improved so quickly in just over 2 weeks with me. I even helped her with her own work, and her teachers ended up meeting me, asking if I could keep organizing learning activities for her. I won't lie, I started to feel like I was stepping into the father role for Apple. After a couple of weeks, Molly had surgery and was finally discharged from the hospital. Taking care of her did put a bit of a strain on our relationship, since we couldn't spend as much time together as we'd hoped, but we remained strong and deeply in love. The night Molly was discharged from the hospital, I took Nani out for dinner and proposed. She actually said yes before I even finished my speech. And they don't like to waste time in Thailand. Just a week after my proposal, we were getting married in a small Buddhist ceremony with Apple's mom, Molly, and 3 of Apple's teachers was there to witness it. Apple's father also came over, ready to take his family to Holland. He was a small, pale, older man, a bit pudgy and bold, and worked as a college math professor. To be honest, you wouldn't have thought that he and Apple's mom would have made a good match, but somehow they seemed to make it work. I spent some time with him and Apple. She was proud, showing off all the new things she had learned with me. And he was pretty amazed at how smart she had gotten. But if anyone could challenge her even more, it was definitely him. They were inseparable, as they should be. The following week, Apple and her family left. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little sad to see her go. I had really grown close to her. After she and her mum left, Molly moved in permanently with me and Nani, and life pretty much went back to normal. Nani and I was doing great, and Molly's health was getting better, with her starting to look more like her old self again. 2 months later, Nani's fiancé visa for my country came through, and we left soon after so we could have a proper wedding. Before we left, we arranged an apartment for Molly and found a good roommate for her. She even got a job working for the government as some kind of clerk. I did end up paying for Molly's share of the rent for a year, just to help her get back on her feet and not have to worry. So, to finish the story, I went to Pattaya and ended up marrying an ex-bar girl and part-time freelancer. We are still happily married today, with 2 amazing kids, and life couldn't be better. It's all love and happiness. Like I mentioned at the beginning, most bar girl relationships don't turn out this way. Thankfully, mine was the exception. But things are different now, especially with social media and phones making it easier for girls to talk to multiple guys at once. I made every mistake they warn you about with bar girls. Let my heart do the thinking instead of my brain, and let's just say I wasn't using the smartest part of my body making the decisions. But somehow, against all odds, life surprised me and made it work anyway. Don't think it's been perfect, far from it. We've come close to splitting up twice, and like any couple, we've had our fights. But we always fought harder to stay together, and each time we became stronger than before. I think any marriage takes serious effort to make it work, no matter who you are or who you are married to, and talking things through is everything, whether she's a bar girl or not. Making things work with a bar girl and actually building a happy marriage is like rolling the dice blindfolded. It's a huge gamble, no 2 ways about it. Do your research, trust your gut, and if the stars seem to align, maybe take the shot. You could get lucky like I did, but never forget you are playing against the odds.